Next session will be on piracy, and I immediately give the floor to the moderator, which is Emmanuel Duchala, who is the head of the copyright unit in DG Connect. Emmanuel.
Thank you, Harry, and good afternoon, everyone. In this new panel, we will explore how copyright enforcement is adapting to a complex and fast-moving digital landscape, and we will try to give you some example of how copyright enforcement works in practice. So what does it mean for the right holders to enforce their right in a world where piracy takes multiple forms, and what it means also for the online intermediaries to contribute to the fight against piracy. So for this, I have the chance to have speakers that will give a great insight on the matter, and I will introduce them very briefly. We have Alex de Joode, who is the responsible for legal, regulatory, and compliance at Amsterdam Internet Exchange. And he's also a board member of EuroISPA, which is the European Association of Internet Service Providers. Welcome. We have Elena Blobel, who is the director of global litigation at AFPI, representing the recording industry worldwide. Welcome, Elena. And we have Katarzyna Gorgol-Meder, who works as the regulatory counsel at the International Olympic Committee, particularly on IP matters and on the fight against piracy. Welcome, Kasia. So our discussion will focus on how online piracy threatens the competitiveness of the creative and sports industry, and what are the solutions that are being implemented, and what are the remaining challenges. And I'm sure you are aware that now there are many forms that the pirates are using in order to get access and to distribute copyright-protected content illegally. It's not only pirated websites, but we have seen in the recent years also the development of new tools and technology which contribute to increase online piracy, for example, with illegal apps, illegal IPTV, and stream ripping. In the EU, of course, we have a solid enforcement framework with Enforcement Directive, the DSA, and this allows the right holders to take action when they identify illegal content, so they can send notices to the hosting service providers to ask for the removal of the content, or they can also apply for injunction in order to block the websites which give access to such illegal content. At the Commission, we have focused our work in the last 2 years on the piracy of live events. And as you know, yesterday we have published our assessment of the recommendation that was adopted in 2023 on fostering efforts to fight piracy of live events. And I must say that all the monitoring exercise that we have done in the last 2 years, with the help of the EU IPO Observatory of IPR infringement, and also with the involvement of many stakeholders and member states, has been extremely useful to really understand the problem, the challenges, and to gather evidence not only on the use of the remedies, but also on their effectiveness, and sometimes their limited effectiveness, as we have explained in our assessment. So now let's start the discussion, and I would like to ask the panelists to describe in very concrete terms the action that they are taken in order to fight online piracy, taking a broad perspective. So not only piracy of live content, but piracy of music content, in the case of Elena, piracy of sport content. So Elena, please.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel, and thanks for the invitation. Yes, I wanted to start quickly to reflect on where we are in terms of music piracy these days. Obviously, the landscape has changed with AI, and new forms of piracy, which I would like to refer to as streaming manipulation or streaming fraud. I will talk about this briefly, hopefully, if we have time. But we still have traditional forms of piracy, cyberloggers, BitTorrent, other P2P services, and stream ripping services, which are a particular concern for music. Stream ripping services allow users to download everything from licensed services, in particular YouTube, which is the primary target for this because of the great quality of content that YouTube offers to the public. Stream ripping has also now become a huge problem in the context of AI, because what we see in reality is where do users find, or where do AI developers find the best and the high quality content? Online, YouTube is the main source. How do you get it? You rip it in circumvention of technical protection measures which have been implemented by the rights holders to prevent these actions. But it's happening anyways. The additional concerns we have from the music side is pre-release piracy, and this connects nicely to the live content piracy discussion that we have had in the past. Pre-release piracy is super, super harmful for the artist. It can completely mess up the entire release schedule, which the label has built up to launch a new recording, and needs to be tackled very, very, very quickly. Again, AI has made this more severe right now because we see lots of fake releases now by popular artists. So users claiming that Taylor Swift has released a new album, but in fact it's just an AI-generated track with Taylor Swift's voice and not a true pre-release content. So new challenges. To conclude this topic, mobile piracy, also a problem. We try to use the DSA. We are grateful for that. Let's hope it works. I think we still see issues with the application, in particular when it comes to the big mobile app stores from the US as well. And then physical piracy is a problem because vinyl is back. If you have not yet realized this, people buy vinyls, but that also means they buy fake vinyls and high quality counterfeit vinyls as well. So, and there we get to the responsibility of online marketplaces where these products can be bought. One point on AI, this is obviously a main concern for the rights holders, for the music rights holders as well. And I found in the discussion that we had earlier today, one point was missing. I think in order to enable licensing, which the music rights holders have done and have started, we see a lot of deals right now that have already been made, but they are only possible if we are put in a better starting position, which means we need transparency on what they have trained. We don't have the transparency right now. At IFPI, we track, I think, 1,000 services, AI services from around the globe, which produce great music. One service has disclosed the training data, one. You can't start any licensing discussions without knowing that on what they have trained. So that's just a point that I wanted to make. How do we tackle all this? We use the great existing framework that we have in the EU. We take direct actions, website blocking actions, etc. But we still face the same issues, which we have also pointed out in the past in terms of direct actions. Often we don't know where the infringers are. Some intermediaries don't do great KYBC, so they can't help us to identify the real offenders. So there we have great hopes on a correct implementation of NIS2 and also the DSA elements of it to make sure that this improves the situation. On blocking, super important remedy. Still, we have evidence that it can not only stop piracy, but it can also drive users to legal services, to legitimate consumptions. So we need to continue these actions. But they are not in all countries scalable, and they don't work everywhere as they should, as has the Commission now also pointed out in the publication that came out yesterday. So I think we need to continue the discussion on how to make the existing framework, in particular at national level, very, very effective and workable. So we hope to continue the cooperation discussion on that.
Thank you, Elena. Kasia, would you have the same tools to describe a bit the action that the International Olympic Committee is taking in order to protect the content and fight piracy? How would you describe the anti-piracy action?
Yes, thank you, Emmanuel, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation of the IOC to this panel. And before I go to the core of your question, I would like to maybe a little bit introduce the subject, why piracy is an important problem for a sport organization, because perhaps it's not obvious for everyone. But the IOC is, of course, known for organizing and ensuring regular celebration of the Olympic Games. And we are a privately funded organization. 60% of our revenues come from the sale of media rights. And 90% of these revenues are redistributed to the sport movement to support national Olympic committees, international federations, obviously athletes through different support programs. So by threatening a major part of our revenue, piracy for us and for many other sport organizations has broader consequences. So what do we do about it? First of all, we have an all-year-long program of monitoring what is happening on the internet, that is on both on online platforms, on social media, and on open web. And we work with technical service providers who do it for us. And then, of course, during the Olympic Games, everything intensifies. This is where pirates target our content the most. So, for example, for Paris 2024, we have been extensively engaging in collaboration with public authorities to raise awareness, to inform them about our anti-piracy program, and to encourage them to cooperate with us. And the EU IPO has also been involved in this work, and we thank you very much for your support and for bringing all authorities from the EU together here in Alicante in January 2021, which was of extreme support and help for us. Of course, we work with authorities in the host territory, and in France, ARCOM, we took advantage of the system that they have there, and I'm going to speak about it later. We also enter into cooperation agreements with those who want to cooperate with us, and these are mainly online platforms, to ensure that the content is removed really quickly and that we can take advantage of the automated tools that they propose. Yes, and this time, for the first time, maybe we are not very innovative on this aspect, but the Olympic Games Paris 2024 was the first time that we took advantage of the dynamic injunction. This is because under the French system, this is enabled through the Code du Sport. Therefore, we had this enhanced protection, and the ISPs were blocking illegal content that was available in France. Of course, with the limitations, territorial limitations that exist, unfortunately, but it helped us create a stronger protection in the host territory. And for Milano Cortina Games, we of course put in place similar cooperation and protection measures. We are going to work in the context of Piracy Shield in Italy. And we are of course working with trusted flaggers to ensure that the content that is blocked or removed is really illegal content.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming now to the perspective of intermediaries, Alex, how would you describe the action that are requested to hosting service providers or to ISP, and what are the challenges in this context?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that there are platforms like Facebook. They host their own content, and they can basically very easily remove content. If you have a normal hoster, an intermediary, they host the content of a third party. They have no idea what this party is hosting. They have no idea if this party is infringing. Under the DSA, it's impossible to do, under the DSA, it's not necessary to do monitoring. And under the GDPR, it's sometimes impossible to do actual monitoring of the stream because there can be privacy implications. So hosting companies are very reliant on third parties sending notices that something is happening within their own networks. Sometimes I understood from the rights holders it's very difficult to find which party is actually hosting the content, because pirates basically can have their own IP addresses, they can have their own uplinks to the internet. That means that the organization that is selling the servers to the pirates isn't aware about the content, it isn't aware about the IP addresses used. So we need to have a cooperation with rights holders, that we get information about what our clients are doing. We need to be able to verify this information. And once we verify this information, we need to find tools to make sure that we can block or remove the access for these organizations. One of the issues is that games mainly take place in the weekend or in the evenings. The staff at the ISP, they work from 9 till 5. So if you send a message, abuse, after 7, something is happening, that's an issue. So some of our customers basically, they decided we're going to give some organizations access to some of the infrastructure. You need to build trust. And then if you see that a stream is happening, there is a tool that can send an automatic message to the customer who is infringing, or maybe a customer of a customer who is infringing. And if there isn't a response within a certain time, you can basically disable this IP address. But in order to do this, you need to know the other party, You need to have good agreements on who is liable if something goes wrong, because you basically give them access to everything. And once that works, you will see that privacy doesn't stop, but it migrates somewhere else. So it's basically a game of whack-a-mole. What we can do is try to get rid of it in the EU, but I don't think we will ever be able to get rid of it totally.
So listening to you, I have the impression that this is, a very tedious process, both on the side of the right holders and on the side of the intermediaries. And in this discussion about, digital and AI, the question that comes to mind, I think, is, how new technologies, digital tools, including AI, could help not only, to detect piracy, to identify the source of piracy, but also to improve compliance. So I would like to have the views of the different panelists also on this question of the role of technology to support enforcement and compliance, but also maybe on how technology and AI is used by the pirates in order to circumvent the possible remedies and enforcement measures. Kasia, do you want to start on this one?
Yes. But before I go to technology, I was really inspired by your remark about the 9-to-5 business of certain intermediaries. I think that in the 21st century, on the internet, one might think that a diligent operator is someone who also works outside these business hours. Okay, that's a side remark. I would also like to maybe just give some perspective on the notice, how the notice system works in our case, because we have shared quite interesting data with the EU IPO in the context of the monitoring of the recommendation. And as you intuitively might guess, for sport organizations, the key aspect of our content is the live nature of the content. Once the live transmission is over, very few people will be interested in it. So our ask and our needs are really to be able to remove this content quickly. What happens today, we have checked what is the average time response to our notices when we were providing data to EU IPO. And guess what's the percentage of the notices that get responded within 30 minutes? Out of 100%. It's 5%. So there is clearly room for improvement. And moving to technology, can technology make it faster? I'm not sure. I think that there is still a lot of goodwill and issues related to business model of some of intermediaries that are involved. But we, of course, use AI, not we as IOC, but our technical service providers in a limited manner, for example, to do some monitoring or to do reporting or analyze data. We also have to be mindful that AI has some limitations. For example, in certain cases, when we, before submitting a notice, we have to have it manually reviewed to be sure that the content is ours and is protected. Of course, fingerprinting technologies, it's not anymore a new topic. I think everybody is relying on fingerprinting technologies on the right holder's side. And these are very helpful and used systematically. What we observe, however, that with the growth of different platforms and the fact that they are popping up quite regularly, the social media platforms and online platforms are still used to disseminate at large scale. It's also a technological thing. They allow large audiences to get access to pirated content through various groups, through various links, etc., that can really spread very fast on those platforms.
Thank you. Elena, you already mentioned a bit the role of AI and also the question linked to streaming manipulation. Do you want to further elaborate on this also to explain how you are using technology and also addressing the challenges of new forms of piracy?
Yeah. Thank you, Emmanuel. But quickly coming back to the 9-to-5 argument, that was really not convincing, Alex. For the record, we work around the clock to tackle the dissemination of illegal content online, and I think intermediaries should do it too. It's a business decision not to do it, and it's wrong. I think, sorry, that was just a quick side note.
I will respond later.
Yeah, you can respond when you can speak. But quickly. But just very quickly on the question on AI, yes, we use the AI in, like everyone uses AI to make our processes more efficient, to identify and more accurately identify content, to notify it faster. We expect also a fast response on the other side, obviously. But AI has also changed and developed or brought us other forms of piracy, which are quite worrying, and I wanted to address this briefly because it's one of the biggest concerns that we have right now in the music industry. So that concerns the topic of streaming manipulation or streaming fraud, which means that bad actors out there create music and upload it on music services, Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, Deezer, you name it. And then subsequently, they go to so-called streaming manipulation sites. These are websites where you can buy any social interaction. You can buy likes, followers, friends, and also Spotify streams or other music streams. These streams are done by using bot farms, also hacked accounts, maybe also from some of you here in the room whose accounts might be hacked. And if undetected, they result then in this bad actor being paid out royalties from the music services as a result of these fake streams, which is obviously wrong. And what happens in terms for the genuine artists and the other creators is that their share of revenue, their pie of revenue is being reduced because this money goes to bad actors. So the problem is AI has supercharged that problem because, as you know, everyone can create music in seconds, within a few clicks. And this music is coming onto DSPs. Deezer recently released a study saying that today, 34% of music uploaded daily is AI generated. So, but now the concerning stat is 70% of this music is manipulated. So it's not uploaded for us to listen to it, some 30%, but 70% is just uploaded to purely to generate money, to use the music services like cash machines. They do their job in trying to detect it, but more needs to be done. How do we tackle it? So clearly this is fraud, and it should be fraud in most jurisdictions here in the EU and in other countries. We have good court decisions confirming this from Germany, France, Canada, Brazil, Denmark, and there's also a big case pending in the US right now. We hope that we can use the DSA also to raise awareness for this issue. In our view, this should be considered a systemic risk, which very large online platforms and very large online search engines need to take into consideration, and they need to think about mitigation measures. At this stage, this is not happening in our view. And yes, we use the normal civil tools, civil procedure tools that we have now tested in the piracy context. But again, we face the same challenges that we have anonymity, we have intermediaries not checking who the customers are, and it's hard to chase to get down to the real offenders. So yeah, I wanted to share this because it's one of the biggest issues apart from AI right now.
Thank you. Maybe just to better understand this, do you think that streaming manipulation is the kind of main threat for the music sector now, beyond the traditional forms of piracy? As such, it's not piracy, but...
Yeah, I think we just don't know exactly what the scale is, right? But the scale could be huge. France did a very good study, the Conseil National de la Musique, in 23 or 22, estimating that 1 to 3% of the streams are manipulated. On Spotify, on other music platforms. I think it's more now. And this is money going into hands of people who are not creators. And those who are, investing time and efforts in their creations, in music, they don't get that money. So I think the financial impact is huge.
Thank you. Alex, first, before going to the question of technologies, your droit de réponse on the
9 to 5.
The possibility to work around the clock.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that most hosting companies are small and medium-sized enterprises, between 3 and 5 employees, including the owner. I don't think it's realistic to expect them to be available 24/7. Doing abuse, assessing notices. Not everybody is able to do this. So I think for the larger hosting companies who have a 24/7 support system, yes, I agree. I mean, That's what my previous company also did. But the smaller ones, no, that's not going to happen. As an employer, you have employment laws, so you cannot ask your employees to work more than 40 or whatever is the amount of hours in a week. If the business only makes it feasible to have 2 or 3 employees, yeah, how do you cover 24/7? So yes, I understand what you're saying. I agree if you have a larger organization, and well, the Olympic Committee is a billion-dollar company, so they can do 24/7. The record companies also are major organizations. They can pay a lot of money for companies to search on the internet for infringing. That can be done 24/7, but for a small and medium-sized enterprise, it's impossible to be available 24/7.
Now coming to, even how the small companies can use better tool in order to be more reactive to the request of right holders to remove illegal content.
Yes, so what we saw is that some of these smaller companies, because they didn't have the 9 till 5 availability, they basically gave some enforcement agencies, like Friends Media, access to a tool where they can basically block IP addresses. So then the SME is not available 24/7. Enforcement can take place, and the next day during business hours you can basically assess, was this a correctly done takedown? Yes, great. We leave the tool open for this organization, and basically everybody's happy. If we see that this tool is being abused by overblocking or doing other stuff, yeah, you can disable access to the tool. So technology, yes, it's available. I think we can solve this only by using technology. But because shutting down a client has legal implications, you cannot fully 100% rely on a tool. There needs to be a human making a assessment. Yeah. I think AI, yeah, it's going to be great, it's going to be big, but now it's not yet reliable enough to make sure that it can take decisions that have a big financial impact for certain companies.
Yeah, but then is there something that can be done to foster the cooperation between the side of the intermediaries and the side of the right holders, which in your experience are also very different worlds? So how would you view the future of this cooperation?
Yeah, I mean, I work for the Amsterdam Internet Exchange. I'm a board member of the European Internet Service Providers Organizations. So my world is the internet world. Yesterday, I was at the copyright world. We saw a lot of presentations with IP, intellectual property, but in my world it means IP address. Internet protocol, IP address, IP range. So even if we utter the same words, they can have a different meaning. And I think we need to bridge these worlds. We're willing to work together. I think there are some other organizations here in the room that can testify to this. But there needs to be a mechanism that can bridge this, that can do the translation, and that can basically help in building trust. Because in the end, it's only trust that will make it possible that you have access to a system and that you can disable streams. And I think the Knowledge Center is a perfect mechanism to basically build that bridge and do the translation. And also make sure that if we say, 9 to 5, that we're also accept that for a small and medium-sized organization, 9 to 5 is the reality. So.
Thank you. Kasia, in your view, to what extent a closer collaboration with intermediaries could help contributing to addressing the problem of piracy? If you have also, example of such cooperation that you could share, but also maybe pointing out to the limits of such voluntary cooperation.
Thank you. Before I go to the cooperation, I would again like to respond to the argument about SMEs. So there are many SMEs that are involved in the organization of the Olympic Games, directly or indirectly, content creators, all these craftsmen, people who provide different services to the Olympic Games in the host territory. I don't think they always work from 9 to 5, and I think that they are also indirectly affected by SMEs in other sectors. However, okay, on cooperation, on a positive note. So we cooperate with through various associations. For example, when we had the Olympic Games in France, we joined the APPS association, which is very active on piracy matters. We also work at European level, although we are not a member of SROC. We work very closely with SROC. And here I would like to also bring an interesting analysis that SROC did in terms of where hosting providers are located, because we often hear this argument that it's very difficult to act against pirates or activate hosting providers who are outside the EU. But through the research of SROC, we know that the infrastructure, very often, that is used to host the content will be actually in the EU and in some of the EU member states. So I encourage also the European Commission to research this topic further, because it's a promising avenue. On cooperation, still we have various cooperation agreements with online platforms, as mentioned. We are also very much open and interested in cooperating with other intermediaries. And our asks are very, very basic for this cooperation. Please be responsive to our notices. I mentioned the 5% figure. Please acknowledge the receipt and act upon it. The limits to voluntary cooperation, of course, taking action creates costs on the side of intermediaries and hosting providers, and we are aware of that. And we think that public authorities, this is typically a case where public authorities can step in and give incentives to this cooperation through legislation on piracy of live sport events, as we have been calling in our responses to various calls for evidence and consultations.
Thank you. Elena, do you have also experience of good cooperation in the action that you are taking to enforce your rights? And in your view, what is missing also to make it, fully effective?
Absolutely, but I think what preceded the voluntary cooperation was legislation, a court case, and then the parties started to discuss how can we avoid this going forward. So I think the legislation is the backbone of any voluntary agreement still, unfortunately, because otherwise the parties will not come to the table. We have that in the EU, I think, so we can work on it. I think the area where we see most cooperation is in the area of website blocking, where we have a lot of voluntary agreements in many member states, and their blocking can make really a big impact. But we don't have that in all member states. We are right now still in court in 2 EU member states where the ISP on the other side is challenging our argument that the Pirate Bay, a website which has been known for 20 years as being a pirate site, is infringing. So, and this can't be right. So we are still working with experts to get evidence and proving that the Pirate Bay is really still an infringing website. And there I miss the trust on the side of the ISP in terms of these pieces of facts. There it's highly inefficient, and we are almost, misusing the court system, and it's impossible, hard to understand why we can't find a voluntary agreement. So I think website blocking is a very good area, and in general, I agree we need to talk more. I think this platform is super helpful as well. Always happy to exchange views, and you have invited us to your offices. I think you can also come to our offices and see how people work there around the clock, but I don't want to labor on that point again. And I think trust cooperation is good, but we do need the legislation just as the incentive to facilitate these discussions.
Thank you. Alex, you wanted to reply to some comments, but let's try to keep the focus on, action against piracy.
Yeah, but I think it's important to understand that a ISP gets lots of notices. There is a lot of content on the internet that people have an issue with. Some of the content they have a legal issue with. Otherwise, they have a moral issue with some of the content. So you have to understand that for an ISP, copyright is just one problem. And that makes it a difference. You basically want them to throw everything aside and go fully on the copyright thing. Some would like to do that if they have an incentive to do this. But for most, it's just another problem. If it comes, we'll solve it. Yeah, if you open your mailbox on Monday, the game is over. You've done your expeditiously thing, but it hasn't helped the IOC or any other game that has been streamed. How can we solve this? Yeah, that is something I would like to discuss, but we can only solve this if there in the end is trust between what we say we can do and, well, that's something we need to work on in the coming years.
But then there's the legal obligation in the DSA which says you need to take it down expeditiously, and then there are complaints and redress mechanisms subsequently.
Exactly.
But I think there is no way in avoiding taking down expeditiously.
But what is expeditiously?
Fast, as soon as possible.
So
it's a legal.
So
$1
if the
million
person,
question.
yeah, but if the person starts at 9 and basically they respond to your email 9:05, that's expeditiously. Can you expect a hoster to be 24/7 available?
Yes, I think
you
so.
say yes.
I think so, yes.
I think we're back to the argument of diligence, which is maybe a philosophical question to be discussed further at a more technical level. What does it mean to be diligent?
Beyond
as an
the
internet
technical, I think the Commission now also acknowledged that, all this, the assessment that we have made showed that there is a limited effectiveness of the recommendation and that we can explore further measures. Of course, we can consider legislative measures, but there is also this question of trust, which is probably underlying any regulatory efforts that the EU can introduce. But if we, just to wrap up a bit this discussion, if we imagine ourselves, in 2 years in the same conference, because I think all of us were 2 years ago in the conference that the EuroIPO organized on fighting piracy of live events. So, what could we wish for all of us to have made, some progress in this discussion and to have more trust in order to be more effective in tackling piracy? Elena?
Continue the discussion. And I think, unfortunately, I'm the director of litigation, obviously. I'm not afraid of litigation. So if worst case comes, I'm happy. I think there will still be, unfortunately, the need to go to court to clarify and further interpret the law. And then resume the discussion.
Kasia?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. From our perspective, of course, discussion is always very welcome, and also at technical level, because this gets very concrete, and maybe this is also where solution can be found to at least some of the issues. However, we also join other sports right holders in a call for something more than a discussion. That is, in 2 years' time, hopefully we could have a legislative proposal on this matter. That is in the process of being further discussed and made better and to the satisfaction of all stakeholders around the table when it comes to live event piracy.
Alex, would you see additional rules as something that the online internet world could work with?
No, I think we just started with the DSA. The Netherlands only appointed trusted flaggers some months ago. The Netherlands, I think, is a big piracy market, so I would want to see how this basically helps fighting piracy now that the DSA is there. I think there are tools within the DSA to make it, harder for pirates to conduct their business within the EU. And we need to basically have the conversations and see if we can find a silver or maybe a bronze bullet to kill off this beast.
Yeah. Thank you. I think you've shared quite useful insight, not only consensual, but this illustrates also the complexity of addressing these problems, which require, I think, huge efforts on both sides. And as the European Commission, of course, we will take further action in order to stimulate and to encourage, this continuous conversation between the two sides to make sure that, we identify solutions which can be effective for live content, but possibly also for other types of content where piracy is also a big threat to the sustainability of the sectors like the music sector. And I really hope that we can find pragmatic solution that will not require years of negotiation, but could result in practical tools for all the market players involved. So thanks to all for your insights, and I come back to the master of the ceremony. Thank you.